What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the Capitalized Podcast, where we help investors build wealth in real estate. I'm your host, Grant Smith. As always, this podcast is brought to you by Sharper Capital Partners, our private lending company based out of Cincinnati, Ohio. To learn more about how we help investors scale their real estate investment portfolios with hard money, you can visit us at sharpercapitalpartners.com. All right, on today's episode, I'm super excited to welcome Doug Phillips. Doug is an investor, property manager, trainer, and speaker, and he's also a realtor with the Chabris Group, which, if anyone doesn't know the Chabris Group, they're the number one real estate sales team here in Cincinnati. Doug, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you, Grant. It's a privilege to be here, and I'm excited to, I think we got some good information for today.
Yeah, I do too. As I was talking to my business partner, Chris, just couldn't be more excited to have you on the show because you cover such a wide landscape of things that are super important, whether it's personal development, but really developing as a professional here in the real estate space. So I want to start off just by saying, like, doing a little bit of digging on your background. There's a diverse group of things we can talk about, whether it's like the competitive bodybuilding, certified life coach, investing in real estate, albeit in more complex ways than probably most people get started with. So I would like to just pass the baton to you and say, what's your current focus professionally? What's your real estate portfolio look like? And what's your day-to-day look like? And then we'll go back to the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, my day-to-day operations, I guess you include, I'm a realtor. And so, taking care of the clients, my duties as a fiduciary, that comes, first and foremost. So I kind of plan and strategize all of my activities around that. So, that's anything a realtor would take care of: writing contracts, negotiations, all of the, facilitating the transactions, so to speak. So that's kind of my, day-to-day and then sometimes weekend activities. And then on the investment side, my partner and I, we own and manage 2 5-unit buildings in Oakley, looking to acquire some more, and we can go into that a little later. But we focus on, Oakley, Hyde Park, value add, services, and just really getting a good group of tenants in there, doing a little more work on the front end, to make sure we get long-term quality tenants. And then, background a little bit, really how I started. I was at OU, and I'm a huge, and this probably sounds so weird, so I'm a huge Schwarzenegger fan. Everybody loves Arnold, but a lot of people don't realize I was reading his memoir, Total Recall. I was in college, and a lot of people think, Arnold made really the bulk of his money through, acting, right? Terminator, Twins, all of his movies, which is true. But he actually, in his book, he goes over how in Santa Monica in the 70s, he started just buying real estate around that area. And that's really how he started developing wealth and, kind of propelling him to the next level, so to speak. So I really drew a lot of inspiration from that. And I just decided that things like personal development, real estate, coaching, all of that just really resonated with me. And it all just kind of intertwined and kind of went from there.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting, because when you think, okay, competitive bodybuilding, maybe wasn't competitive bodybuilding to start, but reading a memoir of Arnold Schwarzenegger led to you starting to invest in real estate, which does not seem like it'd be related at all. So that's it's if anyone knows anything about Arnold, he's got an iron will. He pours village in Austria, the whole thing. Became governor of California, married to Kennedy, blockbuster. The 7-time Mr. Olympia. So like all these things, but then real estate too. And so I only went to OU for a year. I'm like, man, this, I thought I wanted to study dietetics or nutrition. And while that was a integral part of my lifestyle, I don't think I could, project 5, 10, 20 years and, see that as, something I would want to do on a day-to-day basis. So I kind of took, some of the components that Arnold was, utilizing, and he's very clear about how, it's never a one-man job. He's always had, mentors, or whether it's his business partner who helped him start the Arnold Classic in Columbus every year, Joe Weider, his kind of bodybuilding mentor. So he's always had people like above him to kind of help,
lift him up, voice coaches for acting, because obviously he has a very, very strong Austrian accent. And so, that was really, I think, important to me, to kind of go through that stage of my life. So yeah, kind of got into it at in a weird phase. Not many people, I think, would associate that with.
So let's elaborate from there. You were at OU, you were thinking about going the dietitian, or I don't know if that's the correct terminology, but that's the route, dietitian type of route. You read this book, then what?
I got back from OU, and my dad, it's weird how like things work. He heard a radio interview for like tax lien and tax deed investing. And so, my father, another very important, mentor in my life, one of my best friends, just a phenomenal person. He kind of brought this up with me. And if my dad is telling me an idea about something, because he's very, very intelligent, he's very left-brained, analytical. He loves to trade, options and future. He's a walking calculator. And so if he was kind of bringing me this, idea or concept of, investing in tax lien, tax deeds, like, okay, let's check it out. And so that's really how I got my feet wet in real estate, which again is not, I would consider how many people do. Usually it's like, hey, I want to flip a home, or I want to, buy a apartment building. It's like, no, let's go on the back end and invest in people's back taxes at auctions. So that's kind of what happened over the 2013 through 2016-ish period during that time.
So tell me more about that. That's literally one of the main questions I had about your real estate investment journey is, like you just said, a lot of people get started in this space and they go, hey, I'm going to go on market, which everyone knows is super competitive, and it's hard to find properties that, are going to be at a price that either, they either feel out of reach because the capital they need to get started in investing is so large, or they're out there and it's so competitive that they can't find anything that makes sense even when they do have the money. So my question is, what did you learn about that process? Tell me a little bit more about tax lien and deed auction investing. And then, if someone's getting started, where would they go? What would that process look like?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a phenomenal question. So each county within each state has different ways of how they conduct auctions for tax liens and tax deeds. So understanding that, I think first and foremost, is pretty important, because from there, your strategy is just going to vary. For example, Ohio is what's called a hybrid state. And so Ohio offers both tax liens as well as tax deed properties at auction. That's not always the case. Let's see, I believe Indiana is strictly a tax lien state. So, again, that's just another nuance. So within each state and how they operate, each county is going to have different parameters in terms of, what they offer percentage wise on investments. There's what's called a redemption period, for the property owner to redeem and pay their back taxes. So my advice, my recommendation would just be, and I do this as a realtor as well, just pick up the phone and call the county. Start to develop a great rapport with the county. Just a nice warm smile, tone. A lot of times these people are, they're stressed out, they're overworked, they've got a lot on their plate, and just trying to be friendly and genuinely, trying to get information, but understand like you're giving back too. And so what that means is that, so when a property goes up traditionally for a tax sale or tax lien auction, what you're doing is the opening bid in that auction is whatever the delinquent, the back taxes are, plus any penalties. So that's what you're bidding on. And the percentage, the rate of return is anywhere, it can be from 6 to 36%. It's just, again, that's where the nuances of each county goes into effect. And also the redemption period, that plays a part too. So for example, Indiana has what's called commissioner sales, which can be a lot shorter time frame for a property owner to redeem. So it kind of puts the pressure on the property owners to redeem a little faster. Now, someone might say, but like, like, what are you doing? You're taking advantage of property owners. That's really not the case. What we're doing three things when we invest in tax liens certificates. Number one, we're securing a return on investment. So what that means is we're bidding on the tax lien in hopes of the property owner redeeming and getting X amount of percentage. So they win, they get more time. We give them a grace period, we get our return, and then some. Everyone's happy. We're also, a lot of these counties, that's where they get their funding or taxes. So, if a county has all of these properties that's they're not getting tax money on, as investors, us coming forward, we essentially are helping out the counties, roads, police, firefighter, funding, things of that nature. And again, we're giving a property owner time to become current on their back taxes. Now, if say that redemption period goes, X amount of either months or years, depending on the county, and the property owners do not redeem, you can't actually start the foreclosure process, and property taxes are actually superior to mortgages in terms of like their position on the home, on the property, excuse me. So you can theoretically own a home. There still might be liens like IRS, bankruptcy, mechanics, forestry, other liens. Again, that's where calling the county, I think, is really helpful. But essentially, you could you pick up a property for pennies, nickels on the dollar.
No, and your expertise there is awesome because, and you might not refer yourself as an expert, I don't know, but that is such a creative way to get started investing. And so, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm just going to go back to you for this one. What is the difference between a tax lien and a deed auction? What's the difference there?
Yeah. So in tax deed states, you are literally bidding for the deed to the property. And so there's no percentage return. You're not trying to obtain the certificate to obtain an interest on your bid on the back taxes. You are bidding for the deed for the property. So say 3-5 years go by and the property owner are still they haven't come current. You can again start that foreclosure process. I prefer tax lien certificates because I want to say it's a win-win either way, but it's nice because if you do your due diligence correctly enough, ideally you want to be bidding on properties that, because in real estate, right, you always want to have an exit strategy. And so if, you have to petition the court to foreclose on the home, you want to make sure that if they don't redeem, like you are taking ownership to something you'd be happy to rent out, sell, flip. And so I actually prefer tax lien certificates myself.
Okay, great answer there. Yeah, that helps clarify things tremendously. One of the things that you reiterated that I think is so important, and I just want to bring it up because coming from the private lending world, the hard money side, we talk a lot about being first position on a property. But when you own a tax lien, your position precedes that of a mortgage holder, no matter what position they are on the property, which is super important because if you think about it, there's no better position than owning a tax lien on a property, right? Is that just what you're stating?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think Thomas Jefferson almost lost his property because of a tax lien situation. I think someone had to step in, and I can look up the history behind that. But yeah, it's kind of doesn't matter who you are. It takes first position over the mortgage, which is huge. So, and there's ways to you don't have to feel like you're kicking out the owner. Say they don't redeem and you do take ownership. One of the things I learned kind of through mentorship as well was hey, turning around and maybe structuring something that makes sense for the both of you. Whether that's renting back to the person, doing a seller finance deal. There's multiple ways to skin a cat. You don't have to be that ruthless. Okay, we'll foreclose and get the heck out. And that's what I really try to adopt in whether it's real estate, life coaching, partnerships. How can we foster an environment that's a win-win for everyone? And so if you don't have a lot of capital, if you want to get kind of nitty-gritty, do some research, talk to people in the county, get your feet wet, go to auctions, mingle with people. I really do think tax lien and tax deed auctions can be a really great way to get started.
Right. And to reiterate one more time, so with the tax lien, depending on the county you're in, and when you purchase that tax lien, they have some sort of default interest rate where, hey, you haven't paid this. So by owning that tax lien, you are owed the interest for them having not paid for. And I'm sure there's like a per diem and all that sort of thing, right? Okay.
You're 100% correct. Yeah, a lot of times it's the opening bid will be whatever is delinquent in the back taxes plus any penalties, and then so you'll get, if they redeem, you'll get all of that back, plus your plus whatever percentage the county has. And again, that varies from 6 to like 36%. So it's just do your research and call the counties.
So okay, that's awesome. Are you still investing this way today? Do you still go through the, okay.
Yes, a little bit. So I've got a partnership that we focus out in Indiana. There's a couple counties, and we're kind of going through some restructuring and getting a new property manager out there. But yeah, essentially, we've got a few properties out in Lake County, so near Chicago area, and we're doing a restructure, restabilization of some of those houses we picked up, because a lot of times they are distressed homes. So there's some initial capital to account for capital expenditures, things to bring these homes a little up to code and get renters in. And so that's kind of how we, but that's been a couple of years ago. Life kind of took over, and things like real estate, my coaching, and family. I wanted to make more of that. More of those things a priority. So now that's kind of a side. It's a lot more passive. Let's just say that.
No, I got you. No, that's great. And we're going to move on to the next section of the piece, which is more focused on those things you were just talking about. But before we do, if someone wants to learn more about this type of investment strategy, where's the best resource for them to get started?
Yeah, so I'd like to consider, I learned from some of the best in the world on the topic. So 2 people, and we can add those in the show notes. I learned through, his name's Tony Martinez, and then Sean Higgins. They're both, they've really been investing in tax lien, tax deeds for about 30 years or so. So they're familiar with a lot of the procedures, the county, jurisdictions, all of the nuances. So those are probably 2 really good sources to learn from.
Yeah, absolutely. Doug will make sure we put those guys down in the description so that people can access it. So let's transition on to all these other awesome things you've been talking about, which has been, we'll start with, these business partnerships that you've gone into, and I'll start with some leading questions, but we can take it in any direction you like. So first and foremost, you said you got a business partner through Bigger Pockets, is what I have in my show notes. And then you ended up acquiring, property with this, partner. So first and foremost, how did you not only found them on Bigger Pockets, so elaborate on that, but what was the process of filling them out and making sure that the partnership made sense? And we'll get into all details after that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So my wife and I were living in an apartment at the time, and, this was back in 2016, 2017, maybe. And, the whole idea of house hacking was like, man, that's great. We didn't have a whole lot of capital at the time. But I always thought, like in the back of my mind, I know what I can leverage, which to me was kind of my people skills. The sweat equity, just, getting my boots on the ground, meeting people, talking to people. And so I basically kind of put that out in the universe, a la Bigger Pockets, and said what I was looking to offer. And turns out someone private messaged me and said, who's now my present day partner, and basically said, hey, I'm from Cincinnati. I'm stationed in the military. My wife and I are looking to deploy some capital in this area in Cincinnati. We're looking for small multifamilies, and
Long story short, Grant, we basically structured kind of a strategic partnership that we were looking for deals in the hopes that my wife and I could move in, house hack a 4 or 5-plex, and that would be quote unquote my part of the deal. We ran the numbers on various scenarios and buildings. That particular situation didn't work out, but we did just end up making an amenable like cash flow disbursement each month. So, which is great. We're getting monthly cash flow. I'm getting experience kind of being a property manager, talking to tenants, vendors, contractors, all kinds of things. And so, yeah, we picked up a 5-unit building in Oakley back in, what was that, 2018? And then kind of restabilize that. There's some stories with crystal meth and contractors, all kinds. I mean, you've heard the nightmare. I mean, everyone has, it was on the job training. But there were some really nice stories from some of the tenants who had kind of poor management prior. So it was really nice, because of course landlords sometimes get a negative rap. And so I really just try to come from a place, meet a tenant or a person where they are and just work with them. We're not a large, huge at scale property management company. We're kind of a mom and pop. And so I think that brings a little more vulnerability and a little more interpersonal communication to these tenants. And so I think they have a lot more trust in us than, say, a bigger property management company or landlord or owner. And so that's been great. My business partner had the genius idea to do some, direct mail marketing. And so that's how we picked up our second 5-unit on the street. And we basically, he had such a good idea. He said, hey, let's draw up just kind of like a fun newsletter, and we'll just email all the owners. It's like a cul-de-sac where we own and manage, and just said, hey, we're new to the streets. This is the project we're working on. Because at the time we were doing 4 renovations in the building. And we kind of dropped at the bottom, by the way, if, ever looking to sell, just let us know, shoot us an email or text. Sure enough, we only sent out like 1 or 2 rounds of direct mail marketing, and there was a motivated seller on the street. And here's the kicker, is that seller, my wife and I actually lived in one of his apartments 2 years back before that, so 2016. And so, I mean, you talk about coming full circle. And that second unit we picked up was actually one that we had toured, my wife and I, when we were looking for an apartment. And we happened to live in the other building on Brotherton that he owns. So like, it's I don't know, it was crazy how that worked out. And so we helped him out because he was motivated, had some reasons going on. We got a property off market, and I mean, that's been really fun. So that's kind of, again, win-win for everyone.
No, there are so many good lessons in there. I'm just like trying to download them all real quick, because one of the things that I'm taking away here, and it's something that I knew I was going to ask you, but you already came up with it. And it was, what did you bring to the partnership that your partner didn't? Because I think there has to be some sort of like goal or value or mission alignment, obviously, in partnerships. And we'll get into what makes a successful one probably a little bit further down the road. But the thing that I noted here is, okay, you had the boots on the ground. You could, manage the contractors, manage the tenants, get them leased up. Basically everything that they would need, to deploy their capital responsibly, they had in you as a partner. And so in terms of structuring the deal itself, in terms of equity ownership and things like that, are you comfortable sharing, how you structured it and how someone in a similar situation might do that with a capital investor?
Yeah. So basically, the way we structured it is that since my partner is, assuming all the like financial risk and, putting, how you say, all of the financial skin in the game, he maintains, majority, all equity ownership, which is fine for me. I mean, I have no issue, talking about that. And so I really just kind of, use my
my skill set as taking just kind of a PM disbursement, if you will. And so it's just nice because I like talking to people. I like, it helps me kind of build my war chest. And so I'm able to leverage my skills and what I enjoy doing, which is, leasing helping lease the units, setting up all the projects, contractors, turnovers, when someone, when you buy a building and someone has 27 cats living in the basement and working with the SPCA to get humane traps set up. So there's always in rental, I think management and ownership, there's always something really weird that's going to pop up. We had a whole raccoon nest in the attic fall between, the wall joists, and we're scratching at the walls. So, I got a animal trapper added to our Rolodex. So, I think the answer really, Grant, is like leveraging what you're good at. My partner, he's overseas. Obviously, he's not, now he's back in the States, but he's not boots on the ground. Again, he's very intelligent, very analytical. So he's very good with numbers and leveraging his skill set from like far away. I knew that I'm a little more right-brained. I'm a little more, not saying I'm more creative, but just creative. And I like talking to people. And so I could handle all of those things that someone out of state or remote couldn't. And we just developed a really good rapport. It turns out we both went to Marymount High School. He's just about 10 years older. So I think we just kicked it off. I genuinely wanted to provide some kind of value or service and have it worked out like that. I think people get frustrated a lot when they if they're looking for a mentor, a partnership, they just try to get. And I always use the fireplace analogy. My wife and I, we love our wood burning fireplace, and you've got to put the fuel in, you've got to put the kindling and prime the flue. You've got to put the work in before you really get anything in return. And so that works, with relationships, real estate, anything. You've got to add some kind of value. If you're looking for a mentor, don't just come to them and be like, hey, coach me. Find out what their needs are. Do they have something they're lacking? Do they need help delegating tasks? Really just try to take the initiative. And for me, in my case, it was just putting out a bigger pockets. Like, hey, this is kind of what I'm good at. This is what I'm looking for. And just you're trying to add value initially.
Yeah, no, I think that's so huge, especially when you're first getting started. And like you said, a lot of people go in and they think, I'm going to do this all by myself or for myself. And really one of the best ways to get started is to just partner up with people who are, have what you don't, or are smarter and more experienced than you. And so that's where I kind of want to open up the floor to, okay, you've talked a lot about finding good mentors, finding good partners. Maybe just elaborate on that in terms of, okay, not only finding good mentors, maybe talk about that too, but also how to become a good mentee so that people want to coach you and want to, work with you to help expand your personal development or your professional development.
Yeah. So, in I think it's Japan, the word Kaizen, right, is they use that for never ending improvement. And so, in the movie, Any Given Sunday, right, Al Pacino, he's given a phenomenal speech, and he just says, there's pieces everywhere around. We got to pick up the pieces and just, claw for the inches. And so what that means to me is that, for example, like if you're in your car, right, to me, that's time for podcasts or, audiobooks, just cutting down television time at home, looking at bigger pockets, analyzing deals, trying to, if you can't add value to someone else, at least for now, try to add intrinsic value, things that, you can get better at. Now it's harder than ever with all technology, devices, people wanting your attention, grabbing for it. And so we've got to, as Les Brown says, make a conscious, deliberate, determined effort to improve ourselves. And so I guess what I would say is, be the person that you want to mentor you. And so
finding things you can add value to. With tax liens, if one of my mentors, Sean or Tony, there's another one, Dante, if they told me like a book to read or a specific task, how to research something, I would implement it and get back to them. I think that shows sincerity, and that you're taking their words to heart, and keeping your commitments. That's huge. Again, for family, relationships. If you don't trust yourself, if you say you go to the gym in the morning, set your alarm clock, and you don't do it, after time your brain just starts to distrust you, right? And then so you stop keeping your words to your kids, and they start to distrust you, and then there's this whole mental fatigue going on intrinsically, because you don't trust yourself, your kids don't trust yourself, you're like confused and wondering why you're always there's that tension in your mind. And so I know that was kind of a long-winded explanation, but really the bottom line, just keep getting every day better in your field, and then finding ways to give first before you get.
Which sounds so funny, because so often when we think of mentor, it's like someone who's going to go to you and then give you something, right? But it's it almost always starts, at least the conversations I've had like this one, where it starts with going out of your way to help the other person without expecting anything in return. And then if you do that often enough, someone will want to help you because they see how hard you're working, how you're doing this out of just, the goodness of your heart, let's say. And I think that's just, again, it's a hard concept to grasp, because when you're first starting out and you're trying to make traction, you're focusing on the things that you think will lead to the result. And often that doesn't look like doing something just because it's the right thing to do. You hit on something that I personally want to speak to, and that is how important it is. Like, confidence to me is when I keep my commitments. Like when I say I'm going to do something and I do it, because the next time I say that I'm going to do something, I have all of these points in the past to reference to say, yes, like I am going to do this thing because look at what I've done in the past. When I said I was going to do it, I did it. And I feel like that couldn't be more true in just about any area of your life, whether it's professional or personal. So I really wanted to put it like an asterisk on that, because for my mental health personally, that has been so important.
Yeah, I mean, there's a demonstration. Like if I'm facilitating a workshop, that it's called the donkey demonstration, and basically, you take a participant on stage or wherever, if you're doing a Zoom call, and basically I take the person in front of me, and I have them represent, the donkey, and then I'm like the inner voice, like in the donkey's head. And so, I'll say, okay, donkey, like, let's move forward. And like, I kind of take them, move forward. Okay, let's do backwards, left, right. I do that once or twice. And then I'll say, okay, donkey, move forward. And then I will like hold them back, and they're like, they can't go forward. And then I'll say, okay, go back. And I'll, push them forward. And so at the end of a couple rounds, we're like, well, how do you feel? And like the participant will be like, exhausted, or I'm confused, or this, that. And like, that kind of symbolizes what that looks like, when you're not keeping your agreements. You're conflicted. You're trying to go this way, but your lack of commitment or procrastination is pulling you back, or you're going sideways, but you want to go the other way. And so you're just like conflicted, you're tired, you're sluggish, you don't know what's going on. And just keeping your commitments, that's like my wife, for example, right? It's a 100% non-negotiable commitment. I never have to think about not keeping that. And so what that does is that frees up, when you're committed to something, it frees up that much more mental energy. I go to the gym at 5 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Like there's no thinking about it. My gym's already packed. There's no guilt trip. I just know I'm going to do it. And you would be amazed. Even my stupid haircut, right? I've got a flat top haircut. I just take the guesswork out of it. And so I know what I'm going to get. It frees up mental energy for all the other activities where I do need to stay focused and, use that brain power, if you will. So yeah, keeping your commitments is huge. I agree with you. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah. This is an off-topic question. Have you read Atomic Habits, James Clear's book?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You a big fan?
Yeah. And it makes sense. Like, again, I mean, the whole habit stacking, you don't have to just do one thing at a time. For example, like, if I'm doing dishes or if I'm preparing a CMA or whatever, I'm also, that I've got room in the background for maybe an audiobook or, a Brian Tracy speech, whatever the case. I mean, you can do multiple things. You can stack your habits. You can, like the gym bag, right? Getting that already. So yeah, that's a phenomenal book.
Yeah, I'm a big James Clear, big Atomic Habits fan. It's a book that I give away. I find myself buying it often because every time I see someone like, oh, if you haven't read it yet, I'm going to give it to you, because it definitely changed my life. Specifically, you talked about freeing up a lot of that mental bandwidth, and I know we're getting a little bit further away from the real estate thing, but the concepts apply to just about everything you do in life. So I think it's worth talking about. And for me, when I identified who I wanted to be, and then I worked backwards and said, okay, what does this person do? And then I figured out, okay, what habits do I want to implement first? It just changed my life. It just changed it. Before that, I met my partner after that. We got everything figured out, and I became a whole person, I feel like, because I had figured out, what I needed to do to take care of myself so I could then, be present for another relationship in my life. And similarly, once I got my habits figured out so I could take care of my 9 to 5, it opened up so much more opportunity for a 5 to 9. And then, so now I'm here and able to do these things. And I'm a big proponent of everything that stands for. And like you talked about freeing up a lot of that mental bandwidth, because, there's a few key tasks that you really have to dive super deep on daily, if you want to make progress on them. So I guess that's deep work. I'm trying to remember who the author is on that one, but
is that Simon? I know. Yeah. Cal
Newport. There you go. Yeah.
I'll just real quick, I'll just drop another quick tip or hack, because I know how everyone is just, again, being pulled in so many directions. A strategy that I found to be quite effective when turning down, because you've got to turn down a lot of stuff, say no to the average, so you can say go to the great, so to speak. But just a phrase that works very well with keeping your current commitments or things that are important to you is just the phrase, say Grant, you asked me, hey, can you watch my kids tonight, babysit? If I've already got stuff planned, I don't want to disappoint you, right? But I have my stuff I've got to take care of. So what I could say is, I'd love to, Grant, but and this is why time blocking is so important. You'd be like, I'd love to, Grant, but I've actually, I've got family time scheduled tonight. And this is a key phrase. It's not against you. It's for me. And so being able to have that conversation, that dialogue, you don't feel guilty about, because it's true, we're getting so many requests, whether it's emails, texts, calls about, pitching in this or that. That's why if you can time block, I think, which is another important habit, and having your week just really streamlined, those things that randomly, those one-offs that pop up that you don't want to let the person down, but you do, you want to take care of your commitments. That phrase, I'm sorry, I'd love to. It's not against you. It's just for me. I'm really trying to make more of a commitment to spend time with my family or work on myself. And who can say no to that, or oh my God, it's that's another how to keep your mental bandwidth kind of protected, I think.
Yeah, you're totally piquing my interest here, because I'm such a big fan of personal development. That's why I was so excited about this conversation. So if I may, and obviously I'm not paying you, can you just explain to me, let's talk about the process of someone comes to you and you're going to offer life coaching services. This is a real estate podcast, but I think improving your life overall is important. So we're going to go there. My show, my rules. So someone comes to you, let's say, hey, I'm Grant, I'm 26 years old. I reach out to you and I say, hey, look, I'm a young guy. I'm ambitious. I got a lot going on. But I need help. I need clarity on, what it is I'm working towards. I have all these goals I want to achieve. What does it look like when you start a relationship with someone from a business coaching perspective? And then do you have a streamlined process you generally go through, or does it depend on what the issues are that they're facing?
Yeah. So in terms of the streamline process, yeah, I would send out a questionnaire, just kind of a general one to see, where the individual is. And then, yeah, absolutely from there, it becomes, very customized individual. And I make that analogy. I say that because I think of, I did some coaching with, some group coaching with, are you familiar with Tim Grover?
I'm not.
Oh yeah, he was Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant's coach, and Dwayne Wade and Charles Barkley. So we did some group coaching and masterminding, and a lot of people ask, like, hey, did you coach MJ and Kobe? Same. It's like two completely different individuals. Killers on the court, but Michael was a little more talented, still very very hardworking, but Kobe was like very analytical, just watching game film day after day, which Tim said Michael would never do. I think he was able to read his opponents better, and just he had a lot more, I think, natural athleticism. And so I took that to heart to mean every individual is going to be like different. And this, I don't train people in the gym, but it's kind of like that as well, right? Some people need that like rah cheerleader coach. Some people need kind of the martinet, like, you just need to stop messing around and get it done. Some people need a more well-rounded, like, hey, it's been a couple of weeks. Did you still want to keep this? You said you wanted to lose 15 pounds by June. Is this still a commitment you want to keep? Or do we need to readdress this? Do we need to change it? So it truly is individualized. I found that works best because, you start, yes, systems are important, but you start putting folks in just a general kind of box. And then one, they won't feel like they're being heard, because if you just rattle off, general system of exercises, it may not be beneficial. Someone may need a lot of work in the self-confidence realm, which, there's exercises and programs for that. And then someone just may need, someone may just need to dial it back down, like a type A, like a C-suite kind of person. And we may need to break their day down on a schedule, and like, what can we delegate? How can we spend more time maybe with family, more well-rounded approach. So it truly does depend on the individual, I think, for coaching.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's so tough too, because it helps to have an outside perspective 100 times out of 100 when looking at your life as objectively as you can, especially when you have goals that you want to hit. And it's like, man, I feel like I'm always saying I'm going to do this thing, but I never actually get it done. Yeah, super interesting. Something I want to ask, and I know it's not your focus now, but it definitely was at one point. You were a Schwarzenegger fan. You competed, in bodybuilding competitions. What did you learn from that, and how did you apply it to other areas of your life? And then the second question there I want to ask is, what's something about competitive bodybuilding that is extremely difficult that almost no one knows unless you actually do it?
I'll start with that question. So, sitting on your butt when you have hardly any fat on it really hurts. So there's no pushing it. So no, that's kind of a smart aleck answer, but no, really, boy, there's a certain amount of fortitude I think you develop when you decide to commit, to a prep that usually takes about 60 weeks or 4 months. And so, there's getting in shape, there's getting cut, and then there's like, okay, your wife's saying that you look like you have cancer because your jawbones are so sunken in. And so you learn a lot about yourself and your body, what you're capable of. Each week and again, having a coach, each week as your nutrition and weight training program and cardio are modified, like you're like, man, you're thinking, there's no way I could do another 15 minutes of cardio or come down another 200 calories, but you just push, and it's really amazing to see kind of the transformation. I don't think we as humans really give ourselves enough credit as to what we're capable of. And so the body, of course, the mind works really in pictures, and seeing like a before and after picture just kind of blows your mind. And so I think you really develop Napoleon Hill, right? He said back in Think and Grow Rich in the 30s, he said, most people, if they just develop that mettle and, get through the hard thing, they're just going to come out they're going to see an entirely different person than who they were. And so that's, competition definitely taught me that. It taught me camaraderie. I developed a lot of really good, partnerships, friends through the gym. And just feeling better about myself. I played lacrosse and soccer. I was never that good at a team activity, but in bodybuilding, I assumed, and this is the first principle I ever teach, is 100% responsibility. I was the one either eating what I was supposed to or not eating. I was the one going to the gym, working a 12-hour shift and then getting up at 5 to do, so it's like you assume all of that responsibility, and there's no one to rely on, and you're taking pictures every week for updates and they don't lie. And so I like that. That's where I really I think got my first dose of, discipline. I'm a huge visualization person. Like my wife and I, we've got our dream board at home. I carry my goals with me. But I actually started visualization when I was about 17. I started doing self-hypnosis on myself. The technique it's called emotional power programming. And there's this hypnotist back in the 80s, and he would work with bodybuilders and just try to get people through this huge pain threshold to just keep going. And so I developed a lot about visualization at that time. Bodybuilding, I no longer compete because I feel like I have nothing to prove, and I'm with a family, and you can do all that stuff when you're 20 and your joints aren't, screaming at you. But I learned a lot. It was a fun experience. I fully support anyone who does it. Now I'm just kind of at a maintenance phase.
Well, hey, you're probably one of the most, if not the most fit human being we've ever had on the show. So you're doing, if you're not in performance shape, you're about as high up as you could be for any walking person just on any given day. So
thank you.
Anyways, no, I think I have one friend I know who, competed, but it's like you look at what these athletes go through, and it's almost foreign to just about everything we do, because a lot of times in weight training, or for most athletes, it's really about, how you perform, while in action, chasing a ball, but really the performance is every single day. And I think that's such a good lesson, because some people, like you talk about, like a Michael Jordan, they could probably just show up on a court, junior year or senior year in basketball, I should say, because I know there was some cutting that took place, but, and they could show up and they could just play. But in terms of what you have to do to go from basically a blank canvas to competing at it at a high level, probably teaches you a lot of what you need to know to do that professionally too. Because in anything that you start for the first time, whether it's investing in real estate or coaching or as an agent, you basically are starting with a blank canvas. If you're lucky, you might have a little bit more than that, but we have to work at it every day.
Yeah. Michelangelo, when he was asked, on the topic of mastery, he said, I think a lady asking him, he said, if you knew what I had to go through, you would not think this was glamorous at all. I think it was when he was painting the Sistine Chapel on his back for 7 years. But it's all the things no one sees. And that's one of our, at the Chabris Group, one of our, top 3 tenements or principles is integrity. And it is doing the right thing, I should say, when no one's looking. And I know that becomes hard. It's like, let's just take the easy way. But if you operate like that, I think integrity gets a lot of lip service, but that's really the way to operate, I think. Because after a while, if you don't, I think it will start to present itself, right? It'll start to rear its ugly head. It'll show up, I think, in business, in a relationship
aspect, people will just really start to see through it. And so again, this goes back to keeping your commitments. If you always operate from a perspective of integrity, you never have to worry about doing the bad thing, the wrong thing. You know, you keep your word, you act with compassion, you are doing the hard thing even though it stinks, and you know you don't feel like it. So yeah, integrity, that's a huge one.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people too, they're not choosing between two bad things when it's like trying to keep their commitments, right? Sometimes it's, hey, I have two, you know, things that are good, and I'm trying to decide, I don't feel like I can compromise on either one. So then what do I do? You know, and I'm sure you have all sorts of tools to navigate that as well, but that might be something worth covering here really quickly for people who go, yes, I do want to further my real estate investing career. But I also want to be present for my partner, because my partner might not be as interested in this as I am, even though I see it as a way for us to kind of line up our long-term goals. Any tips there?
Yeah, so that's another great point. Again, kind of referencing Napoleon Hill, he wrote that, you know, incompatible spouse was, or significant other was, you know, one of the most paramount reasons for, you know, failure in someone's life. And so I would kind of start there and say, like, you know, getting on the same page as your partner. I think Brandon Turner did a really good job on Bigger Pockets when he was talking about him and Heather, just like getting on the same page, having those, I think he called them, like, you know, date money nights. And so, again, that's, you know, the relationship aspect is, you know, you're only 50% responsible for your part of the relationship. And when things goes wrong, you know, whose 50% fault is it, right? And so, getting on the same page as a partner, I think in that aspect would be important. But I would also plan, you know, and this is fun. I don't think a lot of couples do this, but write down on paper, project your life where as a couple, as a family, you want to be in the next 3, 5, 10 years. I think when you do that, so when people think of sacrifice, right, they think of, oh my God, I got to give things up. The best definition of sacrifice I ever heard was Bob Proctor back in the 80s. And he said, it's giving up something of a lower nature to receive something of a higher nature. And like, man, when you really think about that, it's not sacrificing. And that's why I think getting a journal, pen and paper with your partner, be like, hey, I may have to work, or I may have to analyze these deals, or I may have to meet these people or these buyers, these sellers. You know, again, this time blocking, this many hours a week, but let's not forget our why. Let's not forget our projection out 10 years, what I want our finances to look like, what I want our family life, you know, with the kids, or really that ideal life. You know, if I could wave my magic wand, we say, what would your life like to look like? And so you're just Michael Todd, right? He said, you're the director of your life. You know, you're writing the script, you're starring in it. You don't want to just have it go by. You don't want to be a stand-in, you know, an extra. So taking that time and really putting pen to paper, and I think getting with a partner is crucial. That way you're setting up expectations, the both of you, you're on the same page, literally. And you may have to make those short-term, those smaller, remember, sacrifices, so that you can get something of a higher nature in, you know, a year, 3 years, 5 years.
One last question I want to get into, and then I'm going to open it up to any advice that you want to share to the audience. You know, it has shown here, it's shown through your story about how good you are at educating yourself, you know, getting mentorship, but then taking action. And I'm genuinely curious how you decide, you know, how do you facilitate that balance of, hey, I'm taking in knowledge and I'm taking action on that knowledge? Because I think a lot of us, even the people who are going to be listening to this, are going to be good at, you know, generally speaking, they're going to be good at getting information in, but it's all about what you do with it. So what's your thought process there? What's your, you know, plan for actually taking action?
Yeah. So I think firstly would be, you know, who is the advice coming from, right? When I was out in San Diego at, you know, Real Estate Mastermind, I mean, the people I was around, they all had great families. They were financially, you know, abundant. They were in good moods, all kinds of things. And so those were the type of folks that I wanted to take, advice from. And so I think first and foremost, because there's so many medias now with Instagram and TikTok, all kinds of avenues for information to trickle down. I would say, is this information, is this person valid? And is it going to improve the quality of my life? And then you kind of ask yourself that internally, and then just lean into it and just try it. If someone wanted to, open up a barbershop, or if they want to become a hairstylist, find out what that looks like. Call up an owner, maybe take them out to lunch. Be like, hey, what struggles, what problems did you see when you were first operating a business? If you want to maybe be a restaurateur or a executive chef, start by working maybe in the kitchen, maybe even at an entry level, dishwasher, cook, whatever. Just leaning into whatever you want to do, just taking action. A lot of times, just by taking action, we eliminate, the anxiety, the procrastination, and we get our feet wet and we see if it works or not. If it doesn't, great, we can check it off the list. It's like Thomas Edison, cleverly said, I didn't fail 1,000 times for the light bulb. I just found, 1,999 ways that didn't work. So it's just kind of leaning into it and just taking action. There's a lot, I think, of procrastination and anxiety nowadays, because I think a lot of technology has kept us like, we'll just scroll and I'll think about it. I'll deliberate. I'll look at WebMD. There's so many opt-outs that nothing replaces good old-fashioned just, what the heck. I think everyone's scared for their first deal, whether it's fix and flip or a rental or tax liens, whatever. Just start small, and go from there. Yeah.
I think from my perspective, there were 2 properties that were being sold in Westchester, 3-bed, 1.5 bath, brick ranches, going for 120. It was an REO sale, and I was the first guy there and had him under contract, and I got cold feet and I didn't end up buying them. And I'm kicking myself now because I see those properties are probably worth, low 200s, maybe mid 200s now. And this was back in 2017. Obviously appreciation has been pretty crazy. So you could get into a whole discussion about, what's the future of real estate asset prices anywhere in the country, but specifically here in Ohio. The one thing that it didn't hit me until I started doing some private lending, and I realized there's so much learning that happens just by doing the one thing that it far surpasses almost everything you could probably learn reading books or listening to podcasts. There's nothing like doing the real thing. Like, that is the ultimate form of learning. And I'm sure you've known that. And it sounds so obvious now that I think about it and say it out loud, but nothing beats the real thing. And I'm sure you talked about, it was a whole education experience when you got your first property under contract and then worked it through with a partner. And there's just so much that you don't know. Like, hey, how do I know how much cash flow is my cut of the partnership this month? And you guys probably figured that out, right? You just figured it out. Yeah. So with all those things considered, it's like, for anyone who's listening here, I just want to say, find a way you can get started and buy your first property, or, invest in your first tax lien, and write your first private money loan if that's what you're trying to do, because nothing beats doing the real thing.
Yeah, there's no substitute for just getting in there. And because not that I don't think anyone would want to fail, but say you do fail, that's going to teach you way more than having just a grand slam straight out of the gate. I mean, and I'll kind of end with this because it's kind of a nice note. But when we bought our first building, one of the tenants, I thought she was they were a little standoffish, and I'm like, man, this is weird. They're not getting back to my texts. They're paying on time, but it's like, we need to get in their building to do inspect, just check out the building. And I got a text from her parents, and there was something going on, like huge issues, and basically the parents had to come in out of state and get her and move her back because there's some real serious health stuff going on. And the dad was like, how does all this work, this or that? I'm like, I'll take your time, I'll work with you, I don't know, this or that. And like, I just remember getting a phone call, and it was from the parents, like, we've never met a landlord like you. I mean, I can't believe, like, you were so nice and this and that. I'm not saying I'm just saying, like, it's those kind of stories you don't hear about, in landlord and ownership. It's always they're jacking my stuff up, they're this or that. But I didn't know how to deal with, a huge health crisis, and folks coming in from there's no manual for that. You just do on the job. Again, exercising compassion, operating with integrity, and you just on the job training. And so, yeah, there really is no substitutes for just getting in there and figuring out. Now, that's not to say being reckless, but if you just, it's the whole analysis paralysis thing. If you just sit there and, well, heck, years will pass, and we run risks when we get up out of bed. I mean, that's just the honest truth of it. So we do. I mean, so just get out there and make something happen.
Awesome. Well, that's all the questions. I got more than I could have asked for in this. And I appreciate you sharing so many different parts of your life with us and the audience, because it really just paints a picture about how real estate is a part of your life and not the whole thing, even though, this is a real estate focused podcast. So that's all for this show. If you want to get in touch with Doug, we're going to put his contact information in the description of this podcast or YouTube video or wherever you're listening / watching. If you've listened to this all the way through, then please give this show a rating review so we can continue to spread education, inspiration, and wisdom to help other investors build wealth in real estate. We'll see you in the next one.